Welcome to Beyond the Bench, where we connect the minds of the automotive industry, powered by the Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association and the Automotive Service Tire and Alliance. We'll explore how cutting-edge technology transforms learning and practice and how to get connected to these influential groups. So sit back and relax and enjoy the show, and I hope you learned something. Welcome to Beyond the Bench podcast. We are at the Powertrain Expo in San Antonio, Texas. And with me today, I have Mr. Lance Wiggins. You are the CEO of the Automatic Transmission Rebuilders Association. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct. Yep. Been there, been with ATRA since 1999. I'm director from 2000 till 2021. Now the CEO, executive director of ATRA, and this is our show. And we just love having you here, man. I follow you all the time, so this is awesome. Yeah, this is podcaster to podcaster. This is really cool.
Yeah, this is the fun time. So, we had some good discussions last night where we're talking about getting feedback from the ground level, from the builder's perspective, from the shop owners, as far as what we're doing to help change the industry. So there's a lot of people that I talk to on the automotive side that have their own platform called Changing the Industry Podcast.
Okay.
And we sit and talk with other shop owners, other mechanics, even vendors and suppliers who come in and talk, and they give feedback to the industry on what they need, like how we have all of the vendors and suppliers that are here today. I've gotten some really good feedback from them on what they're seeing, what do they need, and what is it that you're looking at?
So our association is the only one of its kind. So that's the cool part. We're the only automatic transmission trade association in the world. We are a diverse group, right? We've got shops that are 1 to 5, shops that are 20 plus. We've got suppliers. We've got vendors. We have people that come to shows like this. We have people that only do regionals. We've got technical subscribers. We've got online people. Individual shop has its own need. And for the longest time, the association and the board of directors would, a lot of our information would come from the board of directors. So if the board of directors were having an issue, or they saw an issue in their location, or a chapter would see an issue in their location, they'd bring it back to the IBO, and then we would try to address that problem. What we found was we were inadvertently telling people how they should run their business, rather than asking them what problems are you having that we can help you with. And that's a completely different way of thinking. And so last night, as Brandon was talking about, we sat down with a group of 20 guys, all from all over the United States and Canada, as a matter of fact. And each one of them said virtually the same thing. When you're looking for new bodies that are passionate, driven, they're curious, they're competitive. Some automotive guys, some that we're hiring, not even in the automotive industry, was really, to me, I was like, you're hiring people that aren't in the industry. No, but they're curious and they're passionate. And then, of course, Brandon and I, we're literally sitting outside here and talking about this. And I said, but it also requires us to do the same thing, And Kit Lindsay yesterday at the luncheon said, what would I tell my 25-year-old self? And I remember, back when I was 25, which was, now going 30 years ago, but I thought I knew everything about transmissions. I was best dude on the planet until I came to ATRA and figured I didn't know anything about transmissions, because they're so diverse, right? Yeah. Which comes back to that scenario, like how do you bring that new person in, and what do you do with them when you get them, and how passionate are you to teach? And patience.
Yes, patience.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so the perspective that David from Express Auto Transmissions, those who do not know, David is here today with us. I tried to record with him last night, but we kind of got caught up with the meeting with ATRA and ran out of time. So I'm going to try to catch him today. His perspective on things was to find the younger generation that has no interest whatsoever in the automotive sector, to bring those into and just do kind of like an aptitude test, finding, what are their likes, their dislikes. And that was a big thing that I like to see, because I thought it was more that he was trying to find younger guys that are either trying to get into the automotive sector and were passionate about working on cars, but more or less looking at their abilities and their skill sets, not just beyond the passion, but the passion is what drives it.
Right.
That was a big thing, because what I have with the ASEP students that are coming in that have been, so these ASEP students have been in ASEP program for a year. And a few of them that I talked to, they just wanted to do it to learn how to fix their own car.
Right.
That was it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was an interesting perspective, but some of them still are there. Like they graduated, moved on, and they're in the shop now. The issues that I see with them is still the lack of continuous training.
So when we talked last night about this, one of the concepts came of what is the baseline that you need for hire? Where do you start? Do you start with this person knows nothing about automotive? This person knows a little bit about automotive. This person went to a 4-year college. This person went to just high school, an ROP program. This person just likes working on cars and got some tools. Which one of those candidates would you take? It reminded me, and I was laughing. Anybody that's in the older division used to see, what is that, blind date thing? You got three people in the back, one person, and you're guessing to see who they were. Well, that's what it's like. I mean, you know, you can teach people a lot of things, but you can't teach passion. You can't teach drive. You can't teach commitment. Yeah, I coached football 25 years, and I told him, here's one thing that's very easy for you to do. It's very easy. Effort. I can't teach you effort. Effort is the simplest, easiest thing you can do to continually get better, no matter what it is. When you have here's another opportunity for a lesson, if you're willing, but failure is not fault. Failure is a learning lesson. Failure is an opportunity. And if you look at these
ones that are passionate,
yeah,
the ones that are passionate.
That's right.
That's right.
And if you look for somebody that is not afraid of failure, I went to a class one time, one of those mental self-help classes, coaching classes, and said, dance with fear. And I thought, it's a really good comment. Like, I shouldn't be afraid to jump into an 8L90. I shouldn't be afraid to jump into the new 10-speed that we got behind us. I shouldn't be afraid to diagnose this vehicle that I've never seen before. I mean, I don't even know what transmission's in there, but I'm going to figure it out. The curiosity behind that cannot be driven by or pushed down by fear of the unknown, right? So if you fail, you fail. And if you're hiring that young guy, the young person, the young woman into your shop, let them know that it's okay to fail. They're not going to get fired because listen, I don't know about you, but I've dropped 4 vehicles off of racks.
I never have, and I hope to God I never do.
I didn't get fired for it. I did get a tongue lashing, but it happens. You can't, there's some things that you can't, you try to control the best you can, but accidents happen, problems happen. Now, if you got repeat problems, that's a different issue. But but learning from the failure, it's okay, man. That's a good thing.
Yeah, because that's where most of the ASEP students that come in and they ran through an entire trouble tree, and they'll get to a point, but it doesn't fix the problem. But it's like, this is what it's telling me that should be the answer.
Yep.
And it doesn't fix it. And I've ran into that before. I've ran into aftermarket modules that is technically not a module, it's a part, but it runs on what's called a LIN bus. And it was one that had me for 3 days. And some of the other guys, Check Engine Chuck, those that know Check Engine Chuck, he's a good diagnostician.
Sure.
He's up in New York. He's fighting one with the Toyota right now. And he's so involved into it, and nothing that he's done ultimately fixed it, but he's gone through a lot of processes to get to the end result, that there were a lot of problems along the way, and still an underlying issue still is there. And it's like, I tell the guys, I'm like, we run into stuff all the time. It's none of us are perfect whatsoever.
Right.
And it's just, do not be afraid to go. And if you make a mistake, because the fear is what's going to hold you back, over taking that step forward over that fear is what's going to help you continuously progress. Because I've blown a transmission up, blown an engine up. Not purposely, but it was that just one simple thing went wrong.
Yep. I came back from a test drive one time when I was working at a fleet dealership. And what we did was trucks, E4ODs after E4ODs, some every now and then 470W. I had this one truck was with a Texaco. It was an oil truck.
Yeah.
So it had all the oil crop on it. I went out for a test drive with the service manager, and I said, "Man, this thing's running so good." And I came back to the shop, and I went to go do a stall test and blew the pump up. Like, that's not. Yeah, but put that thing back up on the rack and start it over again. But I mean, and that's think in our world, when you fail, there's an expectation from the customer, they want their vehicle back.
Yeah.
First of all, so you have that pressure. We always, in our world at ATRA, we have this winning culture that I bring to the table, and I say, listen, you're not going to fix every transmission with a phone call. That's not going to happen. You're not going to fix every transmission that comes into the shop. That's not going to happen. But what you are going to do is you're going to learn. Eventually, that will happen. Everybody who started out at transmissions, building transmissions, diagnosing transmissions, didn't do it right the first time, every time.
Exactly.
But 4, 5, 6, and however many years you're in it, all of a sudden it just gets easy. And then the new transmission comes out, and then you got to go, time to learn again. And that consistent training, I think, is what we've been talking about.
I agree with that. And there's an aspect that even goes to the older builders. And I see it all the time. And it bothers me. I don't ever say nothing, but I bring it up to some of the other guys saying, all right, so we've got a brand new 10-speed that is that we've never been into before. And the first thing that they write out and they ask the group is, what is your recipe? My first thought is, why is it on the table, and what led us to get to this point in the first place? Like, what's going on? And there's like no information in it. They're just wanting to know, like, what's your recipe to rebuild these things? And
Right.
my son's in the live. He's letting me know this in here. But yeah, I know there's a lot of frustration that we want to help the builders that are trying to learn the newer ones, but the problem with that is that either they don't have the training or they're just asking for a quick question. And those are the ones that I'm going to typically say that we do not answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
The same way with the kids. The kids should be treated the same way.
Yeah. I think, I know that from, 2000s into the late 90s into 2000s, we were primarily a problem fix solution, right? So we'd do a training class and we'd be like, okay, if you run into this transmission with high line pressure, more than likely it's this problem. Inspect this area in the valve body. If it's worn, replace that valve, right? What was the diagnosis? There wasn't any.
There was never a diagnosis. It was just a solution to a problem. But what if that didn't fix it?
That's right. So then all of a sudden, well, that didn't fix the problem. Well, okay. Well, is there a code? Well, yeah. Well, okay. The code is causing the high line pressure. So yeah. And now when we do our classes, we spend, the first 2 or 3 hours on general diagnosing 101.
Yes.
All the way to, and for some guys, it's like, man, that's boring. That's 101 stuff. I like to think that it's continuing your education. Yes, it can be boring in some cases. We may enlighten you in others. If you're getting a nugget here or a chunk of bread here, that's good. You don't have to, the whole 3 hours isn't wasted, because by the time you get into the transmission, we start talking about the transmission, and we're using that general diagnosis to define why the transmission did that and what's wrong with it. When you look at this transmission behind me, you've got a complete power flow, the transmission, how it operates. There's not a lot of people that know how that works. They understand the clutch, whatever the name it might be. Now it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or CDF, or ABC. I mean, everybody has their own numbers or letters associated with the clutch. But if you just even if you went back to the early 90s, went forward, intermediate, direct, overdrive, and then overdrive 1, overdrive 2, overdrive 3. If that's what you want to do, you could. Understanding how that works. Do you understand one transmission that's a Lepeltier gear train? You know how every other Lepeltier gear train works. Beauty of understanding that. And if you get down to that root cause, now when they say, hey man, second gear is doing something. Well, in your head, you drive it and first gear feels good, and second gear, whatever, it's slippy. Let's just hypothetically throw something out there.
Yeah.
You know that it can't be this. It can't be that. It can only be something in these two little areas. Now your diagnostic routine has gotten to a smaller, more manageable spot.
Correct.
No shotgun approach, man.
Yeah, because well, like the 10 on 1000. This the larger version of this one, which this one's a 10 art for those that are watching. This is a 10R80 that's behind us. It's an entirely different animal from a 10R140 and a 10 on 1000. But I started going over hydraulic schematics to learn some things that are what could potentially be going on with issues that are in the field, and just starting from a baseline of how we can start to attempt to diagnose this and bring this down into a smaller niche of an area to say, hey, these problematic areas could be for this concern, this issue that's going on. And we finally got one that came into the shop. The guy's under powertrain and 66,000 miles on the truck. And I spent hours deciphering all of the hydraulics for everything in this unit of what's going on. And what I found confirmed everything with the low limit feed valve, and what it's reducing, lowering line pressure and signal feed pressure. And it just can't act up, and it just fills the default valve and just locks the thing up. And I was talking to David about it, and he found another issue with a PR valve completely worn out, and it's egg shaped, where in the PR valve is egg shaped, but this unit had over 100,000 miles on it. Right. So his situation is a lot different than mine. He's like, oh, you didn't find this? I'm like, no. So I told him that's the difference between 60,000 miles and 100,000.
Yeah, right. But that also says that's a metallurgy issue, right? Yeah. And I'm, of course, I date myself again, but when we had issues with the overdrive pinion or overdrive planning on the 40100s back in the late 2000s, right? Yeah. Ring gear, and they were replacing them. And I think it was Axiom at the time, right? And they were replacing them, and they were just blowing up left and right. And we kept getting calls on them. I just took the ring. I finally took the ring gear, bought one brand new from the factory, took the ring gear, took the planet, went over and had the metal guy cut it up and analyze it. Took the ones that they were purchasing, went over and had them cut it up and analyze it. And lo and behold, guess what? One's softer than the other. One's expanding. And so I reached out to the supplier and said, hey, this is an issue. Yeah. The feedback you get is, well, that's not what they said. Yeah. Well, guess what? That's what's happening. And then we were just talking about the interim changes that some companies do, right? Some companies will do changes in the middle of a year as they're building the transmission. They're, oh, you know what? I think we need to add this valve to it, or oh, we should probably add a little heavier spring to this, or, change this solenoid here and there. In turn, when you're going to rebuild something, what was good 6 months ago, hey, I'm going to put this separator plate in and it'll be okay. But now that this bottom drum has an orifice in it, it's not okay, right? Yeah, because when you modify the separator plate to try to fix one problem, then you create another one if you do not know what the hydraulics are happening on the back end of it. And I have that as well. So I look at all of the orifices, like lube orifices, through most of the newer units. Yeah. That they're a lot smaller than they used to be. They're trying to reduce drag, increase fuel efficiency, right, even with extremely lower viscosity fluids, and it's not lasting. Well, when it's funny when you get into fuel economy, right? Just by default, by physical default, the physics, the law of physics, you can only go so far. You just can't. You can't go. You can't say, well, man, I'm getting 50 miles to the gallon with a hybrid. Okay, cool. How about 70? How do we get 100 miles per gallon on a hybrid, right? Well, then we're going to have to add more battery juice to it. So we get a bigger battery, and then we'll shut the motor down, and we'll add. Well, how do we get 200? So at some point in time, it gets like ridiculous, right? Yeah. When Nissan came out with their 5-speed way back in the day, it was a in my opinion, it was kind of a botched Lepeltier system, right? Yeah. Where they had the band, they just bring on they hold the top sun gear, and it would overdrive. It would overrun first, or overrun fourth. Yeah, fourth in this case. But you could put that band on, overrun first or second, take it off, apply second, overrun second, fourth, and you could have gotten 10 speeds out of this thing. But imagine the shifting, 1,000, 10,000. By the time it got to 50,000 miles, the servo's smoke. Yeah, and I kind of look at where they take the 4L80 and turn it into a 6L80.
You can do that, and people don't know that. I mean, it's the same thing how they did the Allison 5-speed and turned on one more clutch again and made second over.
Yeah, just overrunning it. Oh, yep, just overrun it.
Run it.
You know, technology and what we see, especially coming out from the factory, right? Is a lot of manufacturers are attempting to put the gear ratio to motor and have it in this perfect unison. Sometimes they achieve it, sometimes they don't. But at the end of the day, I think it's good for us. That's keeping us busy.
Yeah, I agree with that. So, I mean, it keeps us busy because the more that the more on off, because that's what's creating more wear, in my opinion.
Yeah.
With valve bodies, is the more gear changes that you're having because it's a clutch to clutch system. So it's like on off continuously. You're working the heck out of that PR valve. You're working the heck out of the AFL valve.
Yeah.
So it's just more motion to create with that.
Well, I think too that especially in our industry, transmissions change more than motors.
Yeah,
they just do. You can have one motor that's take the 5.3 liter in a 2002 Suburban, it's still in the 2020 Suburban. I mean, that's stupid.
Yeah. Well, in that aspect where we're saying that we're changing more transmissions than engines, and now what we're seeing is more of supply chain defects and failures.
Sure.
Because now Ford's released another recall for engine failure.
Right.
And those technicians have to sit there and run that engine at 2,000 RPM, just like GM did the same thing 5 years ago.
Yeah.
They're trying to find root cause analysis. They're trying to find out, is it something on the top end, or we're losing oil pressure on the bottom end? And now we have cam and crank bearings exploding and coming apart. Like, where's the debris coming from? Is this a metallurgy issue? Is it debris that's left in the casting of the block? Is it something left in the casting of the crank? And that's what we thought with the 10 speeds.
Yeah.
Why are we having to replace so many valve bodies? Is it debris that's in the valve body? Now, some of them early on, like first gen 10 on 1000s, we did have a few of them where it was debris in the valve body, still in the casting. It was hanging valve
from the manufacturer.
Okay. But it was early on.
Yeah.
And then after that, we didn't really see anything when the design changed after that mid-year 2020. And then we didn't have really many problems out of them until the last couple of years. So then we started having issues. So was it a software change, or was it a metallurgy change?
Yeah. Is it a vendor change? Did they go to a different metal? Yeah. Did they go to the different, they went from this manufacturer to that manufacturer because of a tariff?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to say. And for us, from the aftermarket perspective, I mean, our goal, I think, for any aftermarket shop, our goal is to take care of that customer as best we can, regardless of how we do it, whether it's, with the reman or with an install or with a rebuild. But one of the most consistent things I think that has to happen in our industry is that training and that logic. And our way, your base that you have there. So listen, now I'm 55. So I started working on transmissions when I was in 1987, right in that area. So I only knew electronic transmissions. I didn't know hydraulic transmissions.
I didn't exactly either. To me, it was like, okay, so we'll take the computer out of the way, and we'll take and look and see what, like TV pressure, you have TV up, TV down pressure. And I had to learn that and understand that aspect. And a friend of mine is in Canada with Evolution Drivetrain, Jeff Martell.
Okay.
I don't know if you know him or not. He was in Vegas last year.
Okay.
At the expo.
Yep.
But I've had him on the podcast and talked to him that his aspect was what he was told and showed that for every 1 PSI pressure, for every mile an hour, you should have 1 PSI pressure.
Perfect.
And he said it just clicked in his head. So after that, it just took off with him to understand he can decipher whatever issue that the transmission's having if it's not engine related. So that's another entire aspect why I've got a lot of automotive technicians that are here. Yeah. And they're here because I'm here. They got a hold of their boss, said, hey, I need the training. I need to go. And they're like, here's my credit card. And they're here to learn the diagnostic side of this. They want to understand why it's happening. And it might not even be related to the transmission. It could be engine related, drivability, something else that's causing the transmission to do what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
But when we alleviate that aspect of it, then we go to the hydraulics, the mechanical, the electrical side of it, and fine tune that niche.
Yeah, we
So we need fundamentals.
100%. Yeah. You got to know how the heart works, right? And when we first started doing our, testing certification training program on our VTS system, our virtual training system, we started with hydraulic fundamentals. We started with fundamentals of electricity. And then we did advanced fundamentals of electricity and then advanced hydraulic fundamentals. So we went from switch valve, servo valve, regular valve to measuring, adding spring weight, changing the distance in which the valve goes, how the valve fluctuates, how it regulates. Then, then they said, well, you know what? We need to start adding, solenoids that'll do that for us, right? So then they add
solenoid regulated pressure.
That's right. So then, when you start understanding how they're trying to adapt to the shift, the feel, the customer will get in a vehicle, they'll drive it. They have no idea what's happening. They just know that it goes, dun, 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 dun. Here's a problem. Or you don't have to know anything. You just pull the dipstick and you're like, whoa, that's bad. Something down there is bad. But when you understand the fundamentals of that, of the hydraulic system, the fundamentals of electricity, that no matter what happens, electricity will find the easiest path, like water, right? Well, hydraulic fluid will do the same thing. It doesn't need to be cooped up behind something. It finds a crack or a little slip and it starts pushing that way. And the next thing you know, the valve starts sliding over this way a little bit more. And then you pull it out and like you said, it looks like an egg shape. Well, it's because that's what's happening. Moreover, now when you start building transmission as a rebuilder, you start adding the clutches and sticking them down. There used to be this thing. Hey, what's the clearance for your clutch backs? And 500 thousandths per clutch back, right? That was like the norm. You have 35 thousandths at the top or 55 thousandths at the top. Now with adaptive strategy, you could screw that all up. You could totally screw it up.
Yeah.
I'd still be okay. But then your transmission all of a sudden is smoked because your clearance is too much.
Because the computer doesn't know how to accumulate for either a tighter or looser. Then you're pulling out 8 tuners, and then you're trying to turn the pressure up. Then you're trying to lower the pressure at the same time. So it's like, because like I said with that one, I was telling some of the other guys, I can't remember if I told you or not, but one 6L80 we did that first time I'd ever seen an issue where it had a 3/4 squawk.
Oh.
And it had a Circle D stage 4 kit in. So I'm like, are the altos creating? I was like, I'm going through, I remember exactly where I put the clearance. I know where everything is at. I'm like, what's going on? And I'm going through the entire process. I'm talking to the drivability tech that's driving the car, and he's got HP tuners. I'm like, let's see if I already understand the hydraulics. Let's see if we can confirm that. Let's add a little bit more into the initial clutch volume fill. So I started going in a little bit more. He said it got quieter and quieter and quieter. I'm like, all right. So it confirms that we do have a hydraulic leak.
Yes.
It's not a clearance problem.
That's right.
It's a hydraulic leak. So he pulled it back out in the lower sealing ring. Air check when I put it together, but it ended up nicking and cutting over the test drive.
Damn it.
And fixed it. Everything's good now, but it was just like that. I've never seen that on a 6L.
Yeah, and that was a great way to diagnose it based on the tools that you have. You're able to add a little bit more to it. When adaptive strategy came into play a long time ago, that virtually is AI for vehicles.
Yeah,
just learning how you drive, and and as I mentioned, you get in a car, you drive it. The customer's like, drives. I get to the grocery store. I get Johnny from the soccer field. Everything's good. When you build it, and then you go through the adapts, or you go through the reprogramming, or you go through the tuning, and however you decide to set it up, you put it together. If there is something that you did accidentally, right? Because we don't do everything. We don't do bad things on purpose, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Accidentally, like you get a set of clutches, and for some reason, say the clutches they're thin. Who knows? Whatever. Yeah. Or the steels are thinner than you think they are, or whatever the case is. But the clearance changes. The first couple of shifts are going to be awkward and weird, but then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, everything's cool. And it could be fine for 50,000 miles, and all of a sudden they come back in and it's smoked. Now it's out of warranty because you've already given them the 224 or 336 or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
But they come back and it's your transmission, and you're thinking to yourself, man, you only put 50 grand on this thing.
Yeah, that's the aspect I start looking at.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so why?
Yeah.
Even though it's out, and then we start working with the customer to figure out, how we're going to.
Your curiosity, right, is
Yeah.
like, why did it do this? And I think that's, coming back full circle from the beginning of this conversation, we're talking about being curious.
Yeah.
Right. That is what it is. You want to find somebody that's curious that can find those problems. If there's it, well, I'm sure there's a lot of dudes on here or mechanics, rebuilders, or automotive diagnosticians. You all have woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning with the answer to the problem that's been hanging on to you forever. Right. So
Paul Zilla said that's why we do this. Why did it fail?
That's right, man. Because at the end of the day, you're curious enough, but you're also passionate enough to follow through to the end game for the win.
Yeah.
Right? I joke with my last name is Wiggins, and like I said, I coached football for 25 years. I always joke with everybody. I say winningwiggins.com, right? So that's one of those things. It's like, I love winning. Winning's fun. If I lose, I want to learn from it. If I fail, I want to learn from it. So I can just be a better person and a better individual, better teacher, human, right? Better dad, better father, better husband, better mechanic. So all of these things traits within us. And again, coming full circle with this, if you find that unicorn, man, hang on to him as best you can and start watering them, feed them. And next thing you know, if you hire somebody, ask them if they want to take your job. That's our goal, right?
Yes.
Grow the industry the best you can, and do everything you can for that.
Yeah, because that was another thing that a lot of the guys had brought up to me at one of the HP Tuners technical seminars that Witt held. They're like, I'm tired of hiring these guys, and they move on and they go open their own shop and they do their own thing. But the negative side that I got back from that was that the guy that he taught and trained to go open up his own shop and left him, and then he's having to hire somebody else, was that he badmouthed the other shop. So that's the wrong thing with this industry. What we're trying to do is to get shop owners and builders to work together in a collective instead of saying, well, this guy down the street built this transmission a year ago and it failed. We're not sitting here trying to badmouth the other shop or say anything bad about the other person. We're trying to figure out, okay, so we're having to go back behind and figure out why it failed and look at a couple of things. And if we find something kind of out of the norm that shouldn't be, but how we approach that in a conversation with either the other shop owner or the builder is to say, hey, I kind of found something in a unit that you built, and do you know about this information to fix that problem from happening?
Yeah.
Help.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, and this is I know we've talked about this in the hallway a few different times. This entire week of Powertrain Expo for the transmission industry. This is the only expo for the transmission industry, specifically transmissions. There's a few other things happening here, like credit card processing companies.
Yeah, I see them.
But this expo that we put on is strictly for this industry. The association, ATRA, was built on a handshake in 1954. And in 1965, it was incorporated. But between 1954 and 65, and I know I'm talking history here, people did things for people with a handshake. They called them up and said, hey, can you help me with this? Hey, I've got a customer that's broke down in your area. Can you help me out with this? Whatever whatever the issue was, they took care of it and they gave them a really good deal, really good price. They didn't overcharge them. I think 10% over parts, and labor might have been a little bit cheaper, whatever. But in 1965, when we incorporated, we made it a point to have what we called the golden rule warranty, which essentially is two guys just having a conversation to try to fix each other, try to help each other.
Trying to help each other.
Fast forward to now, right? With social media, it's easy to be nice. It's really difficult to be ugly, man. And I think that we can't afford to be ugly to each other. We just can't. We have to help each other as best we can so we can continue to grow the industry the way it is. If you have a bunch of young bucks that are out there that are on social media that see the hatred or see the bagging, why would they even consider being part of that? right? And they won't. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got 6 kids myself. My oldest is 33. My youngest is 23. And I'm telling you, they're, if they feel, weird about something, or they see something on some post and they're like, man, I'm not going over there, or I'm not doing that. It's just not going to happen. So if we can help each other in any way, shape, or form, bring a solution to a problem or help each other with the problem.
Yes.
And no question is stupid. There's no stupid questions. The stupidest question is the one you don't ask. You're never going to get better just being quiet and sitting back and watching everybody. And there's not one person that's perfect out there. And and I'll get off my rant here. Check this out. Everybody has an opinion, and all opinions are great. But I always go back to this one thing. I've been voting since I was 18 years old, and not one person that's been at the top has ever fixed every problem. And so if you already go into that with your serenity up here and your expectation a little bit lower, but you're willing to learn, you're willing to have that curiosity and that passion to try to get the win, you're going to be successful no matter where you go, what you do. And if you get the right guy to bring into your shop that wants to be part of your culture, he'll be with you, she'll be with you until you're ready to take off and go, and you just hand them the keys, and then they're off and running, and then you coach them.
Yeah, exactly. Being the coach, that's something that Jeff Martell had talked to me about, and I love his perspective on it. Because he's got kids that are in sports as well, and he's a coach. So, and he's coaching them, and he coaches his kids that are in the shop.
Yeah,
the people that work with him. And I'm the same way with ASEP students. Encourage them. Like when they're beat down, I don't beat them down even further. I try to bring them back up, like push them. I'm like, do not give up.
Yep.
When you're in a bad situation, that's exactly the way we have to go. Make the difference. And that bringing positivity back into the industry, because some of the ASEP students, like the one ASEP student that I told you about, that he's only going through the program just so he knows how to fix his car. Now he's working at used cars, and he loves it. He has the drive to do it, but a lot of the guys were like pushing him down because he was coming in late. So this is almost borderline of the conversation that Pepe, with Pepe about one of his employees, and he's trying to figure out how to not fire him. And that was an aspect with this one ASEP student that everybody kind of like, he's never going to make it. He just is trying to breeze through. And then I had this one old, like 1996 Trans Am that came in, and we barely had any service information in the shop, because they threw out all the old books and everything. He was engaged into this Trans Am that fascinated him. He was wanting to know what was going on. So he was over with me, and I was going through the diagnostic process, and I found out that the DAC module was halfway connected. Somebody's already been in there, and it was like, it didn't set any codes, but it just had the traction control light on, and it was just like halfway, even not, the connector was not even in all the way. But it allowed me to spend time with him and talk to him, like, why are you late all the time? You go to classes, and you're supposed to show up to the dealer after classes to have your time at the dealer. And then I found out he has a sleeping disorder. So he has medical conditions. Nobody asked him.
Yeah.
Nobody asked him, like, what's going on. Everybody just pushed him down and said he'll never make it. But I took the time to sit there and, kind of get a little
to know
personal.
somebody.
No, so that's why we were asking him questions about, personal questions about the young man. Why is he doing what is he doing? Like, is something going on at home, or something else kind of going on? And I understand his perspective of trying to figure out to get through with the younger generation on how we're going to bring them in and train them and coach them.
Yeah. I was going to talk to Pepe about this, because I growing up, I was fatherless. So my dad left when I was 2 years old. So mom did her thing. But I was always curious on pieces and parts and tools and what have you. And when I got into high school, I got into the automotive program, and it was like Mark Caprito said, you're going to go someplace here, man. You can make a lot of money in this business if you just stick to it. Let's get your grades up, because my grades, like I mentioned before, the only classes I passed were metal, automotive, and wood, right? So I was good with my hands. I knew angles. I knew all that other stuff, and I knew how to work tools, and I was pretty quick with it. And I got to the point. But when it came time to go to the job, I didn't treat it like, well, if I start at 8, I should be there at 7:45.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, I'll get there at 7:55. I'll get there at 7:56. And then it became 8. And then it became 8:10. My service manager got a hold of me and he asked me, why am I late? I had zero answer to it. I was a kid. I was 19 years old or whatever, man. And he said, I tell you what, for every minute that you're late, you got to stay that many minutes after.
Yeah.
Okay. And he goes, yeah. And he says, I'm not going to penalize you for it because you're penalizing yourself, basically. He goes, but you need to understand that there's work that comes in and there's work that leaves, and you're responsible for that mother or that father to have their vehicle back to go pick their kid up.
Exactly.
Now that changed my perspective on it, because I was like, well, I don't want that to happen.
I see what you're doing here with him. I like that.
So if Pepe can express that to him, it's like, look, man, we're here in the business to make sure that the consumer that comes is confident in us, that there might be, they need their vehicle Wednesday afternoon at 2:00 because they have to go to the hospital, or they have to go to a doctor's appointment, or have to go pick up somebody from the airport, or they have to pick up their daughter from school. That influence, you have to find a way to push yourself to get that done so it's done, right?
Yes.
That internally is the win. Remember when he was saying yesterday, he said he loves it when he gets the likes. That's a like. That's a huge like. If you can complete that job at this time to the perfection that we're asking, check all the boxes on the list, and you've delivered it to the customer, to see the customer's face, to shake their hand and say, thank you very much for your time and your service. We appreciate the opportunity to come to our shop. And if you have any problems or any issues with the vehicle, please, give us a call back. And then they call you back a week later and say, everything's great. Everything's wonderful. Thank you for letting me spend $3,000 or $6,000 with you. I mean, that's the win, right?
Yeah. Cause I think that's another aspect where a lot of the younger generation is trying to get on social media, and they're trying to get a lot of followers, and they're trying to get all these likes, and he might make a simple video. I'm like, hey, I got all these likes. I'm like, the biggest like is doing a job well done. And for the consumer, you did something to help somebody else. It's not about the money. It's not about the likes, clicks, likes, and views. It's not about how many followers you got. If you had 1 million followers and you're putting out a bunch of bad information, I mean, what are you doing it for?
Yeah. You're doing it for your self-wealth.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, when we all got into this industry, there was a want, a need, an interest, a curiosity, right? We keep coming back to that word, and then when you started making money at it, then it's like, I'm making some pretty good money here. And then, you know what? I could probably consider myself. And then if you got that mentor that says, hey man, you should, I'm going to make you the shop foreman. So now you're the shop foreman. So now you're learning the back end trade. Yeah. Now you're learning the financials, you're learning the consumer and the customer relations, you're learning how to track your ROs, you're learning how to manage people. Then all of a sudden, maybe you become the general manager, you become the top dog, right? Now you're the foreman and the general manager. So you're helping the builder. Now you're teaching, now you're getting into that teaching moment, right? I remember going to a class once and he said, have you ever had a conversation with somebody that's new into whether it's your business or new into building or new into baseball or football or whatever the case is? Yeah. And you're teaching them something and they get pissed. They get really upset. And you ask them, well, what's wrong, man? And they tell you it's too hard or it's too this or it's too that. Listen, just relax. What's wrong? I'm confused. Well, that's perfect. I love to hear that. And they look at you like, huh? And well, because if you're confused, you're about ready to learn something. And when they get it, you celebrate that.
Exactly.
And then that's, again, internally, that's the like. That's what they want to feel that.
That's that click like. Yeah. Yes. You got it. Awesome.
They want
congratulations. They want to cheer you on.
Yeah.
Be their cheerleader.
That's right. That's exactly right. And And you can go overboard with that and blow them up to where if they do fail, it's catastrophic. But that learning lesson that man, I don't know about you, but I used to get very frustrated when I couldn't figure something out. I mean,
Yeah.
hot-headed, frustrated, and it would, or if I couldn't get the strap on, or I couldn't, I was putting a turbo on a DI back in the day, and I couldn't get that stinking exhaust clamp behind the turbo. My hands were down, my laying over everything. I spent 3.5 hours trying to get that thing on. Couldn't get it. I got so mad, threw the wrench up against the wall the whole bit. Yeah. One of the old guys comes over. He says, "Come here, man." He says, "Don't do that." He said, "Don't do that." He says, That's unprofessional." He says, "You're getting paid good money to do this thing. You're struggling right now." I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, let's take a walk."
Take a walk.
Yeah, we went and took a walk. We went and took a look at the new Mustangs, man, and took a look at the new Ford trucks. Back in 1996, when I was working for Ford, and comes back and he says, "What's the problem?" And I, there's those V exhaust clamps, they have the bolt through it. You got that, that
Yeah,
4-inch pipe. Yeah. And it's behind it's the firewall and the motor. You got, you're laying there with your arms down like this and you can't see it. You're trying to thread it in. And he says, "Well, let me help you." And so he goes underneath and he shines the flashlight up, and all of a sudden it's
So they couldn't see in that one.
and he goes, "Turn the clamp towards the driver's side." I turn the clamp. He's all, "Now push." He's all, turn. I turn, and done. It was literally maybe 2 minutes, 3 hours of fighting it for 2 minutes of get your mind right, and again, that's a teaching moment that we, the guys that have been in the business a long time, we have to be able to explain that to that younger generation that, you're going to have these problems, but I'm here for you. And the fact that they then will entrust themselves into you, that's huge.
Yes.
That becomes a lifelong lesson. They'll never forget you. I can name Mark Caprito from my high school, Harvey Hutchinson from Texaco, Pete Husher from Ford, Charlie Jervis from Ford, Don Quast from doing the transmissions and building the transmissions, to Randall Schrader to get me to ATRA, to Dennis Madden to teach me about every transmission that's ever been out there, plus to Roger Bland to teach me how to write properly and technically.
Yeah.
And then, obviously, other heroes in your life, your wife, of course, but
Yeah.
your rock, the one that actually takes care of you mentally. But, all of these people gave me a gift, right? And so I feel compelled to do the same thing, to just keep giving back. Very similar to what you're doing, man. I mean, I know you're on the Brotherhood, you've done a couple of things, but I really got into a lot of your podcasts and a lot of your video intake because you're genuine. You mean what you say. And that to me is huge. I mean, when you're passionate enough to do this is, I mean, I don't know if y'all have ever seen all what's happening out here in front of us, but there's switches and computers and knobs, so there's all kinds of stuff. And it takes effort, right, to do this and to run your shop and to be a diagnostician and to be a father and a husband. That takes a lot of work, man.
Yeah, because most of this, like, I grew up in the technology age of computers. My dad wanted to push me into computers. He did not want me working on vehicles whatsoever. But then 10 years later, like, I did work on cars since 98, but then I didn't get into the actual physical automotive industry until 2014. And then I took all of the knowledge already knowing about computer systems and electronics and how electricity works, all of that, and brought it into it. I guess it was more of that I'm still wanting to know how things work, why they fail, root cause analysis.
Yeah.
So that's what kind of drove me. And even with all of this stuff in front of me, I've had to learn filmography, how things work. So in the last year, I have taught myself and just taken educational classes on filmmaking and stuff like that in order to bring a higher quality engagement to what the information I'm trying to put out. That's all it is.
Yep. So here, I'm just going to throw some personal question at you, if you don't mind. Do you find yourself on any given Saturday or Sunday at your household, you ever diagnose the washing machine, right? You ever diagnose the vacuum cleaner that doesn't work? I mean,
I've had that with the AC unit upstairs.
That's the beauty of this. Guys and gals like us, people like us who are curious in this nature, that want to fix things for a living. It doesn't matter what it is. We look at it your head might bob side to side. You might, be like, what is that? How does that work? This is how it works. Oh, this is what that is. My riding lawnmower, it's got the little two handles, works like a tank. You got to have the handles all the way out in order to start it, right?
Yeah.
And it would start.
It won't move until you put it in.
Yeah. And so you go to fire it up. It goes tick, 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 tick. And my son comes over and he says, "Hey man, the lawnmower's not starting." Well, why not? He said, "I don't know." So I go out there and it just clicks, click, click. And I'm like, huh? I said, "Well, go give me my remote." So he goes over and gets my remote. I plug it to the starter, plug it to the battery, fires right up. I'm like, "Oh, that's weird. I wonder if the relay is bad." And so I pulled it off and I jumped the relay and it started. And I'm like, "What?" And so I looked underneath where the handles are, and there's a switch that collapses. And there's a bunch of grass underneath there. So I moved the grass out, and fires right up. And he asked me, "How'd you know that?" I said, "I didn't. I just followed the trail, man." And I think that's where for what we do, we find excitement and we find that passion of winning. Whatever you want to call it, it's a drive. Yeah. It's a drive for sure. Because could have just said
passion to learn.
Yeah, I could have just said, I don't know, load up on the trailer, take it to Bill's, and have them fix it.
Yeah,
right. I suppose that's the difference. Great,
I think this conversation went in the right direction on what we're trying to do as far as the industry with younger people. Give this information back out to those that were listening as well into the live, and it'll help them. And this podcast will be reposted on Spotify and on YouTube at a later date once I get all the editing down and ready to go for that. But I think we may have helped out answer a question for Pepe as well.
I hope so.
I hope so as well. Yeah. It might help him.
Well, it's great being here, Ben. I really appreciate you. Real appreciate the opportunity to be here, and anything I can do for y'all or any of your listeners, just let me know.
Sounds good. Well, thank you for joining the Beyond the Bench podcast. We are in here at San Antonio, Texas at the ATRA Powertrain Expo, and we will see you next time.